I thought you had to be a grown-up to do one of these. But I still use my fingers to count sometimes, and mean it when I say I love you. So I guess not. Hey Ted. Thanks for inviting me, you big flirt. I'm Tom. I'm a poet, 21, Bristolian, and literally terrified right now. Safe to say I know more about perspiration than perseverance at this moment. Time. Freddie Mercury said it waits for nobody. Andrea Bocelli said to say goodbye. Gordon Ramsay said it's often used incorrectly. Well, I can't help but agree with that last one. As far as I can tell, it's a well-intentioned, if slightly stubborn, agent of losing and finding and losing and finding and losing and finding yourself. Lost. Lost. Peter Pan said it made a fitting forename for kind boys. My PE teacher said, nice try, but property is where you'll find today's kit. My friend Chris said it was cinematically interesting, but that the last season was fundamentally disappointing. As far as I can tell, it's a simulacrum for freedom. I don't know what from. The first I learned about perseverance was seeing it etched into my mother's iris. The first I learned about courage was trying not to be terrified every time she blinked. We had it tough back then. The first 5 years of my life looked a lot like dashboard footage from a car crash. My pillow was an airbag. I wasn't sleeping too good. I was ignorant to most things, but I knew that we had no money, and I knew that we were frightened. The vast majority of my time was spent either in the car or with my childminder. Now, the thing about a childminder is that you'd think that they wouldn't mind children. But a rule without an exception is a city without a border. I shouldn't have actually been here in the first place. A few years after my sister was born, my mum got really sick. She was told that she'd never have another child. She must have thought to herself that some things just aren't meant to be. I'll give this girl the best of me, my love, my joy, my empathy, and that can be my legacy. But then came along a pregnancy. Emergency cesarean, because I had somehow managed to choke to death on the umbilical cord. When I arrived, the doctor held me up and called me a miracle. Made a skeptic out of me there and then. The local paper wanted to write an article about it. They spent hours pushing me on a swing, trying to get me to smile for a photograph. Eventually they gave up. I was the grumpiest miracle baby in the world. People have been trying to get me to smile and giving up ever since. At secondary school, I was a boy gone wrong. Misplaced mind. I was nearly expelled. I used to spend my lunchtime kicking doors and throwing fruit at teachers. Perhaps I wanted attention to avoid being at home. I don't know. But I do know that it sparked a recklessness that never left. I would shake with excitement, running down corridors, hearing my name shouted behind me. Perhaps it was my name I was running away from. When I was 12, I self-harmed for the first time. because I hated myself. I would grab the knife and slice away, thinking that those red barcodes on my wrist were just the price I paid. When I was 14, I took 64 painkillers into a toilet cubicle. 64 was and is my lucky number. I guess I'd decided I would rather die of liver failure than survive in liver failure. I was so sick of myself, Ted. I didn't tell anybody what I did, because I knew that if I did, then I would live. But my mum came upstairs at 2 a.m. I didn't realise she'd been lying awake the whole time, worried. She found me hunched over my bed, still bringing up bile a full 14 hours after I'd started. She's a dentist, and so a combination of her medical knowledge and my ignorance led to my story unravelling. It turns out people don't generally just feel unwell and then convulse in pain whilst throwing up blood for 14 hours. I was rushed to hospital. 3 a.m. ride to Swindon, strapped into an ambulance in agony. I won't describe to you how it felt, but I will tell you that since then, I've never been in pain. Not really. They saved my life in Swindon, and after a few days, I was out. By age 16, I'd lived in 8 different houses, averaging a move every 2 years. It was also when I was 16 that my friend and I decided we wanted to do something stupid. The truth is, we've been doing stupid stuff the whole time, but we thought, let's do something stupid with substance. Something that actually means something. We decided that a 2-man charity bike ride to Edinburgh was the obvious answer. On the day we set off on our 525-mile journey, we had no food, no money, no accommodation, no map, no bike pump, and no worries. We just rode off into the sunrise, like the closing scene of some second-rate movie having an identity crisis. I never was one for endings. We slept in sleeping bags, on pavements and in parks. We cycled for 12 hours a day in the blistering heat. I would grit my teeth and repeat a poem I have tattooed on my arm called Invictus, which is Latin for unconquerable, by William Ernest Henley. Its final couplet reads, I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. It was popularized by a TV ad for a well-known drinks company, without quoting the source, meaning there are people who see my tattoo and assume that I must love this beverage so very much that I went ahead and got the advert tattooed on me. Anyway, onwards we cycled. My shoulders were blistered from rucksack straps carving tracks into my back. On day 3 or 4, we arrived in Derby at 1 a.m. after another 12-hour day of cycling. We were exhausted. We sat down and agreed that we were very close to having to give up. We had no food. We decided that our only hope of completing this would be to cut our time significantly. We agreed that if we could get to Middlesbrough by the next sundown, then we could finish this thing. The sun had not yet risen. It was 1:30 in the morning. We had just cycled for 12 hours. We had not slept. We had not eaten. Middlesbrough is 150 miles north of Derby. And so, off we went. We made it 5 miles before stopping for a cigarette. We sat down on an embankment to the side of an old country lane. We began to hallucinate, spoke some nonsense to each other before we both passed out. We were woken up several hours later by a concerned commuter who explained to us that there are no lights on this road and that it is a miracle we were not accidentally run over. We made it to Edinburgh. It was one of the proudest moments of my life. and comfortably the most physically challenging thing I have ever done, and I think hope ever to do. And now, the next time that I'll be in Edinburgh will be for the showcase of my debut play at the Fringe Festival later this year. It's mad how life comes full circle. For example, last time I was stood on this stage, I'd been writing and performing poetry for under a month. I was competing in an annual regional slam that I'd been out the night before, drinking, like I do sometimes. Enough to forget, but not so much as to forget that I'd forgotten I never did have the balance for tight ropes. I woke up lower than the pitch of a tenor's cough, sadder than a one-man band practice. I'd overslept for work. I spent the day crying in bed. I'd found out that each round of the slam was judged out of 400 and that the scores were projected onto a big screen. I thought, not only am I going to get knocked out in the first round, but it will be by a huge margin and everyone will see. I very nearly cancelled. I was talked out of it by a loved one. I arrived here, eyes puffy, hadn't eaten, hungover, head a mess. Just thinking to myself, I'll get this embarrassment over with and then go home and try to forget it happened. And then the slam started. And I won. It was the first time in my life I'd ever felt good at anything. And the moment I knew that poetry was going to be a huge part of my life. The next year, I was invited back to judge. I was honoured to be considered an expert in any field. And now, I'm here today, doing this talk. Life seems to play out in patterns, and this building seems somehow prominent to mine. I've had quite a hard life, like a lot of people. I've also been extremely lucky, like a lot of people. But in order to get lucky, you have to show up. You can't give in. Persevere, setback, my perseverance sets back. There is a voice inside all of us. Locate it. Listen. Breathe. I am told that this life is more than an open-top bus from heartbreak to wisdom. That we are one left turn from luck, cradled in the corner like a masterpiece. God damn, how you are a masterpiece. How insecurity is your frame. How good you look without a frame and how strong you stand. Like silence. I am sorry to say that my weakness leads me to noise. There's not a street in this town my face hasn't kissed. Dragging my baggage like an unlit cigarette. Wasting away like chances to change. I've been picking clovers in all the wrong places. Tattooing my energy into anything that didn't explode into fog the moment I blinked. Recklessly setting rows of houses alight, hoping to hear a smoke alarm I recognize. I realize now that home is not so easily conjured, so I cast my courage towards surviving today, sidestepping all the dire mistakes that I've been dying to make. I have learned to fight fire with fire escapes, and I know I should have seen disaster approaching. Forgive me my distraction, my love, my eyes were locked on the sound the stars make when you throw them at me. But we both know by now that life demands its toll be taken. 18-hour days began to bruise my blind spots, piling up on the welcome mat at the unlocked door of my curiosity. On a night that I still carry in my pocket like a promise, I collapsed. Like a brave face, housed in a hospital, a ghoul in a gown, a coat hanger in a wardrobe. As you can tell, I am no masterpiece. I am smudged with doubt, seared with hurt. Perfection is a blur on my skyline. But I'm still looking to the skyline in a t-shirt that reads, hope. Still lives here. He's making paper aeroplanes from eviction notices, dancing on the grave of my I don't knows, bouncing on the beat that my heart won't skip, praying to the God that I lose sometimes when the bottom of the bottle is a full moon curse and the poetry I love in is a tire gone flat. He's running rings around the spirals I slip down, teaching me how to stay level. Don't you see, my dear, you have my word. Trust in this because I have his hope, will not abandon me. He just leaves sometimes, like the title of a song on the tip of my tongue. He will always come back to me, and I will always come back to you. I refuse to be another figure on a spreadsheet. I refuse to live as just a figment of your memory. I will lift myself up by my own shirt collar. My spine will be straight talking. I will stand as strong as Hadrian's wall, as pure as Angel Gabriel. My pride will break the fall it comes before. No longer will I be Atlas with the world on my shoulders. Under that burden I faltered. I will be Theseus with a dream, a wish, and a ball of yarn. This is not a call to arms. This is a call to love. This is for anybody running the race to redemption, only to find themselves wham, bam, smack, bang, back where they started. Darling, I swear, hope. He still lives here, stood on his own shoulders, arms apart, like lovers, spirit true, heart brave, with a paintbrush in one hand and a pledge in the other, screaming under somebody else's breath. Boy, I'm going to make you a masterpiece. I've been Tom Dewey, thanks so much.